Hello everyone. Do you hear me, John?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Dan. I'm just
So
noticing that the Facebook page doesn't seem to have gone live yet. Oh, here it is. All right,
there's a
I guess
little
there's a
bit of a
lag.
there's a lag of it, and so you'll also, if people make comments, you're going to see them like 10 to 25 seconds later. We're living in the future. It's very exciting. Looks a bit like normal. Yeah. So I'm Dan Brisebois, and this is my buddy John, and
Hey, everyone.
And this is a bit of a, I guess, I don't know if this is an experiment. We were talking about this kind of stuff a bit lately, moving your farm store online, and then wondered if maybe we should bring these conversations online.
I'd say this is somewhat of a pilot project, right? To see, like, hey, what's it like to have these awesome conversations together with a larger community?
I think that's a good way to look at it. So, yeah. So for folks who might not know me, I'm Dan Brisebois. I farm outside of Montreal in Quebec in Canada, part of Tournesol Cooperative Farm. We run a CSA with 500 members, and we also run an online seed company. And I also run the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy, where I like to mix farms and hey Milo and spreadsheets. And how about you, John?
Yeah, well, I'm a farmer coach and business consultant, supporting small scale farmers in their business and personal lives. My background is I ran a small scale organic vegetable farm in the eastern townships of Quebec for a number of years. And then 3 years ago, we decided to sell everything and hit the road in our camper. And that's how I found coaching and consulting. And I just dove right in. So I work with clients both privately and also through the Kitchen Table Consultants Collective. And I'm actually in the process of launching a new farm, negotiating a lease and just getting stuff off the ground and building irrigation ponds and greenhouses and the whole shebang. And part of that shebang is an online store. So I've really been wondering, like, hey, Dan, what do I do to get an online store up and running?
And you're talking to me because I've been running an online store for 9 years. Our farm started an online. So we have a seed company, and in 2011 is when we moved the seed company from just a paper catalog and a HTML website to an actual online store, and we've been doing that since then. And that's kind of with this COVID-19 that's come on, and this so many farmers wondering what they're going to do with their farmers markets this summer. I knew that I had an experience doing online stores that I wanted to share with people. And so that's how I wound up launching this Facebook page and this Facebook group that you've been actively commenting on. And I actually should also say, if you're watching this right now, please type in your name, a hello in the comments so we know who's there. And also any questions that you have, please type away. John and I are going to have a bit. John has put together some questions that I'm going to kind of answer, but we also want to hear from you and integrate that into the flow.
Right, for sure. And just to give a bit of background on where I'm coming from in terms of my online store experience, and so it can help put a context around the type of questions I'm having right now, Dan, is I helped to develop and I used for many years the Equiterre online CSA management tool, which in many ways is similar to Harvey. I imagine a lot of our American listeners know Harvey. And so at this point, I'm wondering, well, okay, how do I take the experience that I developed out of that process and actually make a real interactive online store, both for vegetables and cut flowers? So, hey, Dan, how about we just dive right into these questions?
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, cool. So one of the feedbacks or pushbacks I'm getting from a lot of my clients or concerns I'm hearing from my coaching clients during this COVID crisis is, this online store sounds great, but it sounds a little complicated. So I think one of the key elements that we really want to look at today is how to, what are the things we need to think about up front so that later on the whole process of operating and maintaining the online store is not, to put it lightly, not a pain in the ass, So essentially, what are the key elements that we should be considering to start off? I guess the first starting point would be platforms. Let's talk about platforms. What are the different platforms out there? And what are the sort of criteria that we should be looking for when we're making the choice of which platform to use?
So actually, before I say anything, I just want to say hi to Sarah and Sam, who just signed in. So nice to see you. I don't know if you know Samuel Bergeron or Sarah, but
Yeah, we've it's a small world, right?
so that's a fantastic question about the different platforms. And so we are Shopify users currently. We've previously used WooCommerce, and we also used with WordPress, and we also used Drupal. And at the time, I think it was called UberCart, their e-commerce. And so there's a lot of platforms out there, and I think there's sort of like two groups to start off with. There's some that are open source software, and then some that are more, I think the term is platform as a service or software as a service. So in the open source area, you have something like WordPress or WooCommerce, which is very, very customizable. You install it on a host somewhere, on a host server, and then you can do almost anything you want with it. And WordPress is actually a blogging platform. The WooCommerce helps it like spruce up and become an e-commerce. And on the other hand is platforms that are created and you're hosting on another server, something like Shopify, or even like Square or some other platforms. And
so Dan, let me just jump in there. When you say, something like WooCommerce, you can put into your WordPress site and, basically get it to do whatever you want. I mean, that's assuming you know how to make stuff in WordPress do what you want, right? Because I've sort of been hitting my head against the wall sometimes when dealing with my WordPress site. How complicated is it to get those sort of open source things to actually do something good?
So it depends on how much computer knowledge that you have and how much time you want to dedicate to it. And it also depends on how complicated you want to get. Now, in our case, one of the things that was very important for us, because we're in Quebec and there's English and French speakers, we wanted a site that was bilingual. And WordPress does have some great bilingual, like WordPress has some fantastic bilingual or multilingual options, but adding more stuff into the mix with WordPress and WooCommerce makes all the apps and plugins act a little funny. So I think when you're dealing with something like WordPress, what you wind up paying for is you might be able to do a certain amount yourself, but you often wind up paying for a web developer who puts things together for you. And theoretically, it's a one-time cost to set it up, but in my experience, that's never been the case. Whereas if you go with a lot of other platforms, you wind up paying a monthly fee, and you can always hire a specialist to work with you. But a lot of platforms like Shopify, you can get a website up and running in a couple hours if you were really pressed to do it in so short a time. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to pay the whole time you're on it. You're going to have a monthly fee. And so it's a renewable expense. But in my experience, you are going to wind up spending about the same, whether you do go open source or whether you go Shopify or you go some other kind of platform. Ideological perspectives on whether you want to have open source and control everything, and whether you want to work with a community that's really interactive, or whether you want to have a business that's controlling your platform. But we made the jump to Shopify in, I think, the winter of 2016, where we had a lot of bugs with our WordPress site, and we weren't sure we're going to be able to fix them up. And over about 3 weeks, so this is like starting just before Christmas, right up until early January, I completely built a Shopify site with about 300 products and launched it to just start taking online seed sales. And it was very easy to do. I think, so whether you're taking Shopify or another platform, I think I would go that way over working with WooCommerce, just because it's more turnkey and you don't have to worry about as many headaches.
Right. And given that it's the 9th of April and spring is getting going and we got to get plants in the ground and fields prepped and deal with this whole headache of how do we deal with the COVID crisis, less headaches definitely sounds like appealing prospect.
It definitely is
very there's definitely a premium for ease of access, something that you can get in a store online in a couple hours and start getting sales in.
Yeah. And that's what I would like. a lot of these platforms have free trial periods, so you actually can mess around with them to see how they are on the back end and how quick it is to do. There's some things that are a little bit counterintuitive sometimes, but if you can get a few products online just on on an afternoon on the trial period, it's probably a good chance that the platform is going to work well for you. If you invest a little bit more work into it.
Right, for sure. Cool. And so you're talking about getting products online. So, what does that look like, and what are some of the elements to think of as you're getting that set up to facilitate management and administration later on down the line?
I guess when you're starting up, so there's a lot of things to that.
Right, because it's like we're trying to sort of parse out what is specific to a platform, and what I'd love to do is really establish like a foundation of like what are those, because we're not going to be able to cover all the topics in this live event or on this Facebook page. So how do we equip people to think about what they need to be actually thinking about?
So I think so there's a few different things I would think about when you're choosing your platform. And the first one I've already alluded to is, are you just dealing with one language or you're dealing with many languages? And if that is something important to you, look into it right away. And the word that people talk about, they use the term multilingual. So type in like Shopify multilingual or Square multilingual or WooCommerce multilingual and read up about how that works. And I do think WooCommerce is maybe the best multilingual I've seen, but nonetheless, we went with Shopify because it does have a plugin called Langify, which lets you do multilingual pretty good and getting better. So that's one consideration. Another one that was really important for us and has always been is how easy is it to import all your products as a batch? Because for sure, you can go in and create product one by one by one. And if you have 5 products, it's not the end of the world to do that. But even if you have 50 or 60, like let alone 300, it gets to be very tedious to do it one by one. And you might make little mistakes on some or the others. So you want a platform that has a batch import. And nowadays, many of them do. And you'd use a CSV format file. And you'll have different columns. One will be like the product code, another's the name, another's the description, and then whether it's published or not. So that's something I would definitely look for. And it's an easy way to bring a lot of products in and edit them afterwards. And then also similarly, can you edit inventory in a batch format, or do you have to go one by one? So those are big questions that I would look for. I made a couple notes. What else do I have here? I would look at also how it handles shipping and like pickup options. And is it something that's only by weight, by price? How easy is to customize them? That's something that I think is an important thing. And I would also look at setting things up.
Hold on, Dan. Can we just slow down a little on that? Because
definitely.
Yeah, since I'm new at this, maybe I'm missing a couple of the nuances there. So you're saying, how does it handle shipping? What you mean basically, what kind of options does it provide? Like, what kind of options are you able to provide to your clients when you're setting up your boutique? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So at the end, so people will, I guess the process of the online store from the client's perspective is they're going to go onto your website and there'll be somewhere that they click, and then there's your products, and they're going to choose them, and then they're going to add them to the cart. And then you'll go and they'll check out, write in their address, and then they'll get to a point where they have to do payment and also shipping options. And so if you're a seed company like me, shipping literally means shipping. We're going to put it in a box. We're going to put an envelope on, an address label. We're going to put some postage on it. We're going to ship it in the mail. It's going to get to them. But in the case, if you're running a CSA or a farmer's market or some kind of delivery, in that case, shipping is basically, the delivery option that you're offering. And so if you go to a farmer's market once a week, then that shipping might just be like, so we used to go to the St. Anne's Farmer's Market. So our option might have been St. Anne's Farmer's Market at April 7th. And people just click on that and then they choose it. And but then maybe we go to 3 farmers markets. So you want to have the different farmers markets there. And so I guess one of the complaints I have a little bit with Shopify is that it doesn't give you a lot of ranges to customize it. Like you can't easily have what you're basically choosing is you're just choosing options that have names and are associated with like a minimum weight or a minimum dollar value. Like if the order's over $20, they'll see these shipping options. If it's over this weight, they'll see these shipping options.
Mm-hmm.
So that's easy to set up. But a challenge we had is we had, 5 drop-offs that we were going to, 5 CSA pickup locations. And so we wanted people to choose a specific pickup, and we want to choose a specific day. And it'd be great if some products were available only to pick up next week and some to pick up in 2 weeks. And so some of those get to be really nitpicky in the choices. And so what we wound up doing, you're going to say something or?
Well, just so in the sense, like if you have like, garlic harvest is coming in and you want to say, okay, let's take in some bulk orders of garlic that's going to be available on that date. And tomatoes the week after, or like splitting the garlic into 2 weeks. That's something that you've had a challenge setting up on Shopify.
Yeah. And what we've ultimately wound up doing is we're really taking orders for the next week. We're not taking orders for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks down the line. And in some cases, if we know the product's going to be similar over the next 2 weeks, maybe we'll take 2 weeks of orders at any one point. Because our CSA has weeklies and biweekly members, some of the biweeklies are only coming in 2 weeks. So they'll want to place an order that they can pick up in 2 weeks. And so in our options at the end, we just chose, there'll be, so if we're talking 1 week, simplest, we'd have our drop off. So the Beaconsfield drop off, Point Claire, Vaudreuil, and the farm. And you have those listed. And then we would just add a date to it. So it could be like April 6th, Beaconsfield, April 7th, Point Claire, April 8th, this way. And having the date was really great because these people are CSA members who come all the time. And sometimes they're like, well, I didn't mean this week. I meant the next week. But when you've chosen that date, it's clear and it winds up on the invoice and the order form. So people see and they've committed to that. And so if we were going to do 2 weeks at the same time, then it would say like Beaconsfield, let's say April 6th, and then it'll go through the list. And then it'll be Beaconsfield April 13th and go through the list. And then people can choose the one they want.
Right. And then and I can see how that's limiting because you're not going to have 5 drop-off points and 10 different dates up online already. And you're not either able to, you can't associate a particular product to a particular date either, saying, orders are open currently, but there's paste tomatoes online that are only available in a month from now. That's not something that you can.
Exactly.
Right.
And so we're at a size in our business. And we have 500 weekly CSA members, and with the bi-weeklies, it's like a total of maybe like 700 families that are getting stuff from us over the season. So it's a lot of people, and we know they're going to order a lot of stuff. And so nowadays, we know if we put up an order, like a products for order for next week, we're going to get orders. But there was a certain point when we had less experience with that, where we would want to take orders earlier, and we know maybe we're ordering 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, so we could allocate all the garlic to where it'd be going, and then as it comes we know that it's sold at that point. But because of the way the shipping has worked, we're kind of we're dealing more week by week rather than a month in advance. And and I don't know if some of the other agricultural platforms like Harvey, you mentioned Farmago or Local Line, how much customization. I think they have a little bit more customization on the shipping options. But I don't know about that. And that's probably, I think, the weakest point of Shopify, but we've really worked around it by naming these different options. And we're really happy with how it's turned out.
Right. And I would just add to those farming ones, I haven't used it personally, but there's also graze cart, as in a cow is grazing in the pasture, graze cart. So
I have heard about it, but I know that's what I know the least about right now.
Yeah, I'm just getting some feedback from the farming community. Oh yeah, they have graze cart set up by a farm, so I don't know exactly, but just saying it's an option out there to check out as well. I think this would be a good point when we're talking about shipping to also mention to not underestimate the cost of doing home deliveries. I know that in this time there's a huge uptick in online sales and especially home delivery sales. People are doubling and tripling their sales right now, so it's a huge opportunity for local agriculture. But definitely not underestimating that it can cost, anywhere upwards of $10 to $12 per delivery, per box being delivered to home delivery, and even higher depending on the distance to the delivery point and the number of deliveries you can do per hour. I was really surprised when I was doing out the math what a huge difference it makes. The difference between doing 5 deliveries per hour, 6 or 7 per hour is huge in terms of the cost. So I'll post that cost calculator on the Facebook page so you can check it out and enter your own numbers, because there's nothing like crunching your own numbers, right?
And so just a reminder that this is John and Dan talking here. For those who have joined since we started, feel free to type your name in or a hello into the comments if you wish for us to know who's actually watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to type away. I can see people are watching. You can also give us some hearts.
That's creepy, Dan.
Or some thumbs ups, and we love that kind of stuff too. Yeah. So, something else that when choosing a platform, I would look at how many apps plug the platforms. Often, there's a specific thing that they do, and then you can customize them with different plugins or different apps to get various functionality you couldn't with the basic out of the box. And this is true of just about any platform. And so sometimes there'll be apps that are created by the actual company, and some are created by third-party developers. Often they're like in the case of Shopify, I don't know if you call them certified, but they check out the apps to make sure that they work, and most of the time they do. But I would look to set up a store that needs the least customization possible. So try to find apps. I mean, free apps are great, but if they work, and the least possible. And so like with our Shopify store, I think of the basic stuff that we do for the online orders, for the CSA vegetable orders, is like we have an app set in so that we can print nice invoices or pull lists easily. And that's something that is native to Shopify. And we also have another app that just links with our MailChimp account so that people can subscribe easily, and that we can actually add products to our MailChimp newsletter. And like send a newsletter, and there'll be a box right in it, and you can click to it right away, and it'll add it to the cart, and then they can go to MailChimp and they can check out. And so those two are the main ones that we use. I do have a few others that we're using. There's Langify I mentioned for the multilingual, and there's one I use called Better Reports, just so I can look at the data and analytics more. But the least you modify, the happier you'll be, and there's least things that are moving. And
right.
The MailChimp, I hadn't thought about it till right now, but that syncing with the MailChimp is really fantastic to be able to to put a newsletter together. And I can just go straight into my products from the store and just click it right away. And then the picture from the store will show up, and there'll be a button that I can customize, shop now or view or whatever. And it really is phenomenal as a way to, like, if I'm going to sell garlic in August, I can put up the 2 garlic or 3 garlic varieties I want to promote, and people can get there and go right to the product, and it makes it really easy for them to then add it to the cart, and they don't have to go hunting for it. And they want garlic, and it makes them happy to be able to get it.
Yeah, right on. Fantastic. So basically, the 4 criteria that you've named so far in terms of what we need to be looking for when choosing a platform are our language needs. Does it cover multilingual case uses? So do we need to do French and English, or French, English and Spanish, or whatever? Number 2, does it allow batch importing from a CSV file? So are we able to import products and all their details in large groups rather than having to go through and do it one by one? Number 3, how does it handle shipping? So what kind of options is it offering in terms of shipping options so we can offer our clients? And number 4, is it compatible with other apps, and what apps are out there that will be necessary for you to set up the functionalities that you want?
Yeah, and I would say with the compatible with other apps, like MailChimp is something being compatible with. Another one, and maybe we'll talk about this more, but a bookkeeping could be something that you want it to be compatible with, like if you're with QuickBooks or FreshBooks. And that's actually one that I find a little bit of a headache. So we've actually moved away from that because it doesn't merge as well as we'd like. So we have some other go arounds for that.
That's weird. I would have thought that they would have figured that one out.
Well, I think there's a lot of different scenarios that come in, and stuff that was so. So one of the challenges had to do with what apps we were using. We had some apps that can edit orders, and so sometimes the same order would wind up 2 or 3 times inside QuickBooks. And then if you get a return or like if you refund somebody, sometimes it wouldn't be canceled in QuickBooks. And so there were little things like that were challenged. And then also taxation is a big thing. So in Quebec, we have 2 taxes, and then like some products like books. And so if you're selling vegetables, you don't worry about taxes, at least in Quebec. But we sell seeds, those are taxed. And then books only had 1 tax. And so that started to create some funny things. And it became more of a nightmare. So we instead enter on a monthly basis sort of the total sales by outlet. And it's in Shopify and some spreadsheets that we actually analyze what's happening on a week-by-week basis or day-by-day basis.
So rather than importing each sale into QuickBooks, you just say, okay, total Shopify sales, or maybe break it down into a couple categories and then do the analysis separately.
Exactly, yeah. And and there are different ways that you can filter. And like based on like what kind of product type it is, so in our case it'd be like, is it vegetable, is it seed, is it garlic, is it cover crops, and then there's also sometimes the channel of how it got brought in. So your actual online store has its is one channel, but sometimes you can create draft orders on the back end. There's point of sale, and that's something we didn't talk about too, but some of these, and not all of these platforms, have a point of sale operation or option. So often called POS, and that's like actually be able to take sales, live, like just have almost like a cash, and then you can swipe a credit card and deal with invoices. So like that might be another channel. And so being able to filter by channel and by product will give you different combinations, and then you can figure out. So like we'll analyze based on those, and we'll set up our books so that we're looking at stuff in those kind of streams.
Right on. All right. And so does Shopify have a point of sales option?
Shopify does have a point of sales option. And up until last year, you had to pay an additional $40 or $50 US to get it. But I think that with Square becoming more active in the online marketplace, this is my suspicion, they have eliminated it as a separate fee. So it's now just part of the basic thing you get the Shopify. So if you're on the $30 tier, I think you have some functionality. If you go up to their $70 or $80 a month tier, you have the full functionality. And so there's not an extra fee for that, other than the Shopify fees. And it makes us very happy.
All right. And so all in all, like, how complicated is all this? Like, one of the biggest worries that I'm hearing from clients is that this is going to be really complicated to set up an online store. But what would you say to someone who says, hey, Dan, sounds like a great idea, but damn, this just sounds complicated?
So it doesn't have to be that complicated. And I think I've gotten some tangents that make it a little bit more complicated. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned QuickBooks and some of the accounting.
Yeah,
I know you like that stuff.
Yeah, but, super nerd Dan is in the house.
So I think that to keep it simple, like if you're in one language, that's easier. And then you have your define products, you upload them, and take orders during a set period. Like if you're going to a farmer's market on Saturday, maybe your order period starts on Monday and it ends on Wednesday evening. And so on Wednesday evening, you shut down the store, and then and then you can print your orders. You can compile what you need to harvest it, and then bring it to the market. And that might be kind of the simplest way to do it. And did I just lose you, John? Okay, I think we're going to get you back in a second.
Yeah, sorry about that, Dan.
You disappeared for a moment. Right. I saw a few questions came in. Sarah mentioned, do you know any app to send text messages on mailing lists? I don't know any apps about that. But do you know anything like that, John?
No, but I'm writing it down and we'll check it out.
Great.
So keep an eye on
Chris,
the Facebook page.
yeah, Chris mentions awesome info, guys. Thank you. um, and Ken mentions that it's complicated for you and or for him. And if you want to type in any specific things that you find complicated, I'd love to touch base on those.
Yeah, and I also
Uh,
want to mention that one of the things that we were thinking of, this is a pilot project for do we want to have basically a weekly talk show, Dan and Jonathan's talk show. And one of the ideas that we've been having is to have the hot seat. So to have someone from the public who has some specific questions, maybe some challenges they're going through, and to get them right online and have some live coaching to help you guys get this stuff up and running as fast as possible.
so we'll see. That's an ambitious promise. We'll see what we can do.
Well, to move you in that direction, how about we put it
Yeah.
that way? To do what
Yeah.
we can in 20 minutes to move you in that direction. So, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the person who posted a comment there saying it was complicated, but maybe we can be in touch and we can actually get you on and talk live.
So yeah, so where were we with talking about like how to keep things simple? And I think, so simple really flows through your whole farm. And this is just one more part of your farm. And like I think if you have 45 products that you sell at farmers market, your market stall is more complicated than if you have 10 products. And that's also true with your web store. If you have less products, it's less complicated, and you can focus on those products. And yeah, a lot of these sites, when you sign in, you basically choose a theme, how it's going to look. You choose it up. You can customize colors or not, and then it's just the CSV file import is something that's important to do. And I think I've been thinking about doing some of like my next spreadsheet, a Farmer Spreadsheet Academy tips on that. I've also thought about Google Forms, but maybe I'll go more CSV files. And I think that's, that part can seem tricky, but filling out these, like getting your products into a spreadsheet is a really easy way to start thinking about them and making them more standardized that can then work well with the online store and then just make it easy to take orders that way.
Can you give us a specific example of what you're talking about, just so that we really see what you're seeing there?
Like as a CSV,
yeah, you're talking about simplifying your standardizing your formats to make it simpler to bring it into an online format. Can you give us an example, like of a vegetable or of a scenario where that would be applicable?
Yeah, so let's say you're harvesting carrots. You can sell a bunch of carrots, and that's pretty clear as a unit. You could also have a pile of carrots and you're selling it by the weight. Or you could pre-bag it and have it by a pound, 2 pounds, 5 pounds. So these are all different ways that you could sell carrots. You could also just sell carrot by the unit. But deciding how you want to sell the carrot, let's say I just want to do bunches, then that's a way that I'm committing to selling it that way. And then I'm pushing bunches of carrots. If I'm going to sell carrots online that are bulk, I don't want to just sell pound of carrot and you choose how many pounds. I probably choose a pre-made format. So maybe I would choose 1 pound, and then I might have another option that's 5 pounds, another option that's 20 pounds. And you want to have your bags that are the right sizes for those, and might have different price points. So maybe when somebody buys 1 pound of carrot, it winds up being $2.50. I don't know, $2.50 a pound. And if they wind up buying $5, 5 pounds of carrots, then it might be $10, like $2 a pound. And if they're going to buy 10 pounds, it's a different price. But as opposed to having a complicated site that has, you choose how many pounds you want, and it does the math and shows your price, just putting the options right up there at the beginning and predefined prices. So it's a product that they're looking at. It's not a fancy algorithm that that has to crack it for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Perfect. Right on. So you're talking about setting up the theme, importing products through CSV file, and thinking up ahead what your standard formats are going to be in order to keep things simple. Also, I imagine in between different category of products, keep it pretty standard as well. For instance, if you're selling carrots in 1 pound, 5 pound, 10 pounds, well, don't sell beets in 2 pounds, 7 pounds, 15 pounds, right?
Exactly. And you can kind of have comparable price points if it's a similar cost of production. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is true also if you are live at a farmer's market and just selling that way. It's way easier if you've made defined how you're going to sell the items, it's just easier to think about it there and define how the marketplace works for you as opposed to kind of just doing whatever people ask you to do.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's something that I often see, whether it's with people who are setting up online stores for the first time or getting into CSA for the first time. There's sort of this, there can be this tendency of like, oh, I got to opt for like 4 different options, 3 different basket sizes and weekly, bi-weekly, and this like I'm going to appeal to everyone by just offering tons of formats. And I think that somewhere along the line, it's there's a premium to simplicity, and the people that we're selling to, the clients, as much as we think organic vegetables are important, it's pretty low on their list. Like they've got their whole life, and like figuring out how they're going to order their vegetables is actually not that high on their list. So the more we can do to actually simplify and really guide them to making the right choices, it actually becomes a service that we're offering to them, that we're offering not only a vegetable, but we're just offering an expert opinion as a farmer as to like, okay, look, this is the right size for a family basket, or just so the simplicity can actually be a service that we end up providing the client rather than a drawback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sarah has a question here, common question. She says, my sister encouraged me to use Instagram as a sales platform. Any word or experience with Instagram? Mailing lists are great for folks that are computer users or good with email, but not everyone. Learning a lot. Thank you. You're welcome. So I don't have a lot of experience with Instagram as a sales platform. I don't know about yourself, John.
No, I don't.
And maybe that's something we can look into and bring back more information. I think one thing about using Instagram or Facebook is you're really on someone else's platform and you don't have a direct link with your customers. I mean, you can see who your fans are and who you're working to, and I can see how it's convenient. But one thing that's nice about having an online store is the people, they're dealing with you directly, and especially if you're able to collect their names for a newsletter, you wind up getting an email list that you're dealing with specifically, and who your clients are, and it's easy to communicate with them. And so, at a time like this, with this COVID crisis, if you can't go to farmers market this summer, I know not farmers markets don't necessarily know what's going to happen this summer, but if suddenly you can't go, but you already have all your clients' emails, it's easy for you to send them out an alternative to how you propose to help them. Whereas if you don't have that information, then you're just reaching out, trying to get them. And with Facebook, you can send out some of those calls, but it's not the same as directly emailing people. And and right now, if you don't have that email, you'll try to find something. And Facebook is a good way to work with. Instagram's a good way to work with. But it's worth starting that email list now of your clients, because you'll have it later on if you need it in a hopefully not in a similar situation. Hopefully this is a once in a lifetime kind of situation. But there are other reasons sometimes that things happen. It could be a big snowstorm that happens and the market shuts down, but you've already harvested a bunch, and you want to find a way to help get people, or there's a power outage, or
you decide to stop going to farmers market, right? If you've been going to market and you're like, hey, I'm only going to go CSA, or I'm going to shift to an online store and I'm going to get my Saturday morning back, having those contact information can be really, it's a value.
That's a fantastic point, John.
Right. And I think that's something that, assuming farmers markets will eventually either still be open or come back, I think it's something I'd really love to see all farmers doing is collecting that information. So whether that's through, enter your email to get the invite to the farm open house, or is it enter your email for a 5% discount, or is it, whatever way that at farmers market, week in, week out, we can be harvesting people's emails address. I think it's always a good idea, and obviously getting the appropriate, consent for them for us to reach out to them.
Yes, consent's an important one.
Right. As in it needs to be clear what they're signing up for. It's not just put in your email address to get a free bunch of carrots, but it's put in your email address. I will be contacting you, and just making sure that people know what they're getting into.
Totally, totally.
Hmm.
I
Right.
see that
And
we're,
just one last thing about Facebook, not to be too paranoid, but I've, listening to podcasts and people in the online marketing space who've been in here for a long time. I mean, the algorithm and the way that Facebook decides who gets access to your information has changed over time and will continue to change. And I understand that, even Google is changing and Gmail is now filtering out stuff where we have permission to contact people and all of a sudden we're getting filtered out. But still, I think having the actual email address is more secure long-term business strategy than just relying on Facebook or Instagram followers.
yeah, I seem to. Do you see me still? Have I just disappeared on you?
Well, on my end, it's been a little funky as we were discussing before the call. So I'm only seeing myself and our two frozen faces. So hopefully that's not what everyone's seeing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Um,
Anyway,
Same here.
it's getting
Um,
to be about bedtime, eh?
yeah. One thing I did want to kind of one thing to think about with your online store. Like I did mention the bookkeeping, and it is good to think about how you're going to do bookkeeping with some of the payments and keep track of that is a good thing. It's really easy to work with credit cards. If you're doing checks or e-transfer, that's easy. Cash can be a really big nightmare. So it's good to think about how cash is going to work in those kind of systems. But I mean, cash is great to get, but it's that's good to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I think is, we often think about our businesses as fairly unique, and I think that you should set up your farm. If you're using an online store, set up your products so they work well with your online store. Don't try to find a way to adjust the online store so it works well with your products. The more you can follow the platform's rules and suggestions, the least you're going to be like in a tough situation if there's if there's an update or an upgrade and your system no longer works.
Right on. Fantastic. So I think this is a pretty good stopping point, Dan. And I guess you know, one of the topics we could get in next week would be around the cost. Some of the concerns I've been hearing is, oh, well, is it worth it? What's the cost benefit analysis? Is this too expensive? So tying into, how we're accepting payments and also how do we think about the cost of this kind of a system versus its benefits? Could definitely be an interesting subject. And I would definitely invite all of you to check out the different platforms and send us your questions, and we'll be happy to address them in next week's episode.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Those sound like great topics. So we're going to be here next Thursday at 8 p.m. and we're going to have more. There's actually a question here that I see from Chris. Maybe we should just answer before we get off. But do we promote our website in other ways than through email lists, like paid ads on social media, etc.? We do use some Facebook ads to promote like our CSA signups, or to promote like our seed store will promote like with like a free shipping or some kind of other discount code. So those are ways that we can do it. But what I find the stuff that brings often the most people in is if I create a really good post that people then share with their own communities. That's where things will more go viral. At the scale that we're in, rather than paying for promotion, and that's something that, like, it's like with our CSA shares, we definitely have gotten people through Facebook ads, but I would try to get people to promote you because you have something that they want to share and that they think is great for their community, as opposed to having paying Facebook to promote you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so on that note, so next week we'll be back at 8 p.m. and we're going to tackle some of these things that John mentioned, and it also depends on what kind of feedback we get. And I'm going to try to figure out how to unfreeze my picture for next time because it seems to be frozen right now. But thanks, John, for coming on and chatting with me about this.
Yeah, this has been fun. I look forward to continuing this.
And thanks everybody who signed in and watched and your questions. It's really appreciated.
Mhm.
And good luck with setting up your online stores, and happy farming.
Yeah, have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
So later.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.